Welcome, everyone. This is Joe Dager, the host of the Business 901 podcast. With me today is Dr. Keith Sawyer, one of the country's leading scientific experts on creativity. Dr. Sawyer is the Morgan Distinguished Professor in Educational Innovations at the University of North Carolina. He has published 14 books, most notably, or at least to me, is his book Group Genius, that showed us to be more creative in collaborative group settings, how to change organizations for the better, and how to tap into our reserves of creativity. He followed that book up with Zig Zag, which identifies the 8 stages of the creative process and contains over 100 techniques to enhance your personal creativity. Dr. Sawyer, I'm honored that you could join me today.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
I'm not a musician, so I can't really relate to that jazz band real well, but the improv theater group, okay, I can. Are there rules underneath that? I mean, because it seems fairly effortless for those comedians just to improv.
It's true. There are a set of practices that make it more likely for the ensemble performance to be more successful. I guess you could call them rules. Maybe it's better to call them practices or habits or guidelines, but they're all designed based on experience over decades of what is more likely, what individual actions are more likely to result in a successful ensemble performance. So, for example, very simple things to start with, perhaps, that every time you take a turn of dialogue, that you should offer something new to the scene, rather than simply saying yes and agreeing with whatever happened before. Then you're not driving the scene forward. So the scene just pauses for a minute. So every time you do something, it should add something. It should move forward. And then the second piece of that, maybe the inverse, is that whenever you add something, it should respond to what's happened just before and build on it. So that in a sense, you're always going up. If you respond to what's happened before by denying it or rejecting it or saying, no, I'm going to take the scene in this other direction, then the energy goes down. These sorts of things just are learned through experience by the Chicago improvisational community. And they're all designed for that multiplying collaboration, not just an additive collaboration. So there's two things there's a lot of things that tend to make it fail. One is if you're looking back and rejecting what's come before, you prevent that process from moving forward. But another one that's maybe a little more subtle, if you're looking too far in the future, that also ruins the scene, because the best performances emerge in a spontaneous and surprising way where nobody in the ensemble knows where it's going to go. So if you think you know where it's going to go and you predict and act as if the scene will go in that direction, it usually does not. And then it results in a conflict that takes all the air out of a scene. So really, you're always acting in that moment. But reacting to the other actors in a way that, even though you're in the moment, it actually builds over time to an ensemble performance.
Well, that kind of reminds me of this thinking of, structural tension, maybe I'll call it, where we got to have some tension to pull us. But if and you think of like going over a hill, but if that idea is too far out there, like over the hill, and we don't know what's on the other side, we start getting distracted and we may flounder and not build upon something, right?
It's the challenge of organizational management. In my research, I think all of my colleagues, that anytime you have innovation in an organization, what I say is it emerges from the bottom up. It's in this improvisational fashion. The ideas come from individuals acting in a very distributed collective system. And you don't know where the ideas are going to bubble up, but that's where you get surprising breakthrough innovation. It never comes top down. It never comes from senior management saying, this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to innovate. That pretty much always fails. That's the way innovation happens, is bottom up and emergent and improvisational. But if it's only that, then the risk is that it's chaos, right? And then it goes off in some weird direction where it's not aligned with your organizational strengths or your strategy, or it's a completely different industry sector, or maybe there are some legislative or legal guidelines that prevent that. So there always has to be some guidance, some guiding structures or processes in place that, I don't know if I want to say bottle, the emergent process, but channel it. And that's really the challenge of organizational management, is getting that balance right. And it's really hard to do. It's different in every industry sector. It's different depending on how mature the industry sector is. Do you have more top-down structures and guidance? Do you have more enabling of the bottom-up emergence? It's different for every organization. So that's where it takes some real subtlety of leadership.
Everyone tries to write this book and systemize the creative process a little bit, and and some even try to make it a very linear type thing. Your book, Zig Zag, is that thinking different? Explain that thinking a little bit to me.
That's a good point. And as a matter of fact, right over here, I have a bookshelf full of creativity books, and it looks like you do in your office as well. There are a lot of books out there about innovation and creativity and how to enhance your organization. There are some misconceptions, though, and one of the biggest ones is that creativity is linear, or that the innovation process is linear. And it's built into business process management. For example, you have the so-called stage gate model or waterfall model, right? And a lot of organizations are still designing their innovation processes on these linear models. Whereas the reason I call my book Zig Zag is to emphasize that the process is not linear. It's a wandering improvisational process. So I started out studying group improvisation, and then as I got more and more involved with creativity research, I discovered that even the individual process of creativity is essentially improvisational. It's a wandering, unpredictable path that is more likely to lead to a successful creative innovation.
What's the best way for someone to learn more about what you're doing, keeping track of it, and maybe information about the book? Is there a particular website or anything?
If anyone's interested in creativity and innovation, I hope you'll follow my blog, my Twitter handle. My blog post is keithsawyer.wordpress.com. You can link to everything from my website, which is my own name. It's keithsawyer.com, which will keep you up to date on my keynote talks and my consulting engagements and my latest publications. My Twitter handle is Dr. Keith Sawyer, Dr. Keith Sawyer. By the time I got around to getting on Twitter, Keith Sawyer was already taken. I got my domain name back in 2004. It's keithsawyer.com. That was before, I guess, people were thinking about it. So yeah, please go to my homepage, keithsawyer.com, check out my blog, follow me on Twitter, and you'll get the latest information about what's going on in creativity and innovation.
I admire your work. I'm jealous that you get to work on the North Carolina campus. I have hardly ever been to a prettier campus. And
it is beautiful here, yeah.
This podcast will be available in the Business 901 iTunes store and the Business 901 blog site. So thanks everyone for listening.